Welcome to the Take 92 podcast. My name is Sammy Warm Hands. I am your host, and today I appreciate you tuning in for our season premiere of our 6th year as a show. I've got one of my all-time favorite drummers, Sean Sellers from Good Riddance. We're going to talk about his projects, of course, with Good Riddance, with Downcast, 10-Foot Pole, The Real Mackenzies, working with Bill Stevenson, Ryan Green, Cameron Webb, you name it. This is a great talk with Sean Sellers.
What's up, dude? How's your day going?
Oh, just getting started. I'm a pretty late at night in the studio person, so,
Maybe.
Anyway, nice to meet you. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Been a longtime fan of yours, and I've kind of been on a break from the show, so you'll be the first episode of the 6th year of the show.
Oh.
You have a very specific style in my mind. I've always been a guitar player, singer guy in bands, but it's the drumming that draws me in. It's the energy, whether it's Chad Smith playing a simple groove or somebody going ape shit on the, there's nothing better to me than that fast hardcore punk beat, and nobody does it better. I mean, I think a lot of times that sound gets attributed to Eric Sandin from NoFX.
To be honest with you, none of us can play that beat as good as that guy.
It's like an engine cooking along when he plays it,
Dude, it's gnarly. It is literally, it's so perfect every time he does it. It's kind of disturbing. For the rest of us, we got to put a lot of work into that beat to make it sound right the way Eric does it. And I'm like, dude, this is a lot of work. And then you watch Eric do it, and you're like, really, Dick? Because you don't even seem like you're trying.
Yeah.
But it's super funny because when Bill Stevenson first recorded NoFX, he told me that he called Ryan Green and was like, hey, dude, it's got a question, it's kind of the NoFX sound. This was before he tracked him, and he was like, how do you get that kick drum sound? I'm just curious. That's a super thing. And Ryan was like, you figure it out.
Yeah. And
Bill was like, okay, that was kind of weird. Gets Eric set up, starts recording, he was like, oh,
it's
so
the
that's
guy.
how you get that sound.
Yeah.
You get that guy to play it. And then it just sounds like that. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you got
funny.
Every other drummer using plastic beaters and Danmar kick pads and all this shit trying to figure it out. It's just the player.
It's the player, and there's a lot of people make that first kick note louder than the second. And
yes.
That's usually where everything goes to shit.
Yeah, and that's why so many people wind up just using triggers and stuff in the studio, because if you've ever produced a punk record or recorded your punk band, it's always the bop, ba-da, bop, ba-da, bop, ba-da on the kick drum, the full energy and then the half energy when I got to do 2 notes.
I spent a lot of time working on my consistency.
Yeah.
Years and years, and a big, massive help with that was playing with in-ears.
Really?
In 2001, started playing in a band called Kidney Thieves. Everything was on the click track. I actually had electronic drums and my acoustic drums, and I was on ears. And let me tell you, you put yourself on in-ears to a click, you quickly find out how not good you are.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wow. So, I hear every tiny mistake. I'm like, oh, this is going to kill me. Because you really can hear the difference in hits. You can really hear your inconsistencies. And it starts to drive you a little mental. You're like, well, I don't want it to sound like that. I want it to sound perfect,
Yeah.
So just through years and years of doing that, and, we fast forward up to now, I'm in a band, Bisto Blanco, with Alice Cooper's daughter, and Alice Cooper's bass player for the last 18 years is our other singer, and I'm on in-ears, and I'm on a click, and it's so good, to be honest with you. I see all the benefits of it when I go into the studio.
Yeah.
And producers are stoked. They're like, oh, I love how consistent you are. Or a sound man, dude, you're super easy to mix. Oh, yeah. He was like, yeah, thanks for hitting everything the same. I was like, oh, cool. All right.
Well, yeah, and that was kind of what I was getting at, is that you have a rare combination of speed, power, and consistency. Because usually you can have two of those things, but with the speed, like you said, it's either inconsistent as hell or people aren't playing as hard. You know, it's like when you watch Bud Goff from Sublime and he's got his hand over his head to hit that snare to get that power. You're playing so fast, you don't have that kind of recoil to do that, and yet it has that power and more.
It's basically like a 1-inch punch.
Yeah.
So when my arm is up here doing this, I'm not hitting any harder than when I'm
just
right
with
here.
The wrist, yeah.
At that point, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter how hard you hit the drum. There's only a point that drum can handle that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then you just choke it, and it's like, oh, no, and I choke the drums all the time. Ryan Green has yelled at me. Dude, oh, sorry. Record. Seriously? Okay. Dude, I get it. You're super excited. Hit the toms. Boom, boom, boom. Would you just hit them like that? He was like, I know you're tiny, dude, but when you go,
yeah.
He was like, the drum started to sing, and then it just went, and all the tone went away. So ironically, you can make a drum louder by not hitting it as hard.
Yeah.
If you're hitting it right, because now it's getting to to open up and really sing. Like on that snare, it's a 1-inch punch. Like watch Bill Stevenson.
Yeah.
Dude's gnarly. And he's like, right here.
Just the wrist. That's great, though, man. I mean, I've recorded guys like that who it's like, hey, can you track a couple punk songs with me? And he's like a death metal drummer, right? And he comes in, and it's just remarkably consistent because he's so used to doing these gravity rolls and blast beats and these things that you just have to be so spot on.
Oh, yeah.
Versus most punk drummers will come in here and just be all over the place. It really makes a huge difference. And to me, even as a kid, before I knew anything about recording, there's just a certain magical sound when a snare hits that compressor just right that I've always just kind of been in love with, you know. And I just remember hearing ballads for the first time, you know, Fertile Fields opening with pretty much just the drums, and everyone else is just kind of ringing out, and you're doing those just little ride bell accent, little hi-hat accent, but you're just playing the kick and the snare, and it is just music to my ears, man.
Yeah, it's actually kick, snare, floor tom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My top 5 favorite drummers would be John Bonham, Stuart Copeland, Dave Grohl, Josh Freese.
Yeah.
But Dave, Bonham, Copeland, it's signature drum beats.
Yeah.
Obviously, Alex Van Halen and Neil Peart, for sure. You bang out some of that shit, you know, you know what song it is.
Yeah.
There's no two ways around it. And I'd read interviews, like when I was younger, about that, and also about like playing the same thing live. Like, dude, the guitar player's playing that riff, like, he didn't change the main riff of the song because we're live, you know? Like, so the same applies for drums. And so I'd always, like, first and foremost, when I'm writing drum parts, and it's always, is there a place and a possibility to write something signature?
Yeah.
That has to be played. And also, if you take all the music away, you know what song that is.
Totally.
Fertile Fields. If I just did do-da-da-da, do-da-da-da, do-da-da-da in the beginning, that could be any punk song that starts out with fast drums.
Yeah.
But you throw in that hi-hat bell, now there's a melody.
Yeah.
And now, nobody else can do that. Because if you start doing that, you're like, oh, that's Fertile Fields, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
What are you doing, dude? You're fully ripping off Fertile Fields right now. You can't do that.
It's like Byron from Pennywise he has kind of that signature Tom snare fill that he does. You know, like people have their identifiable licks.
Dude, we call that the Byron.
Really?
In our circle, dude, from Bill Stevenson, Eric Sandin, me, like all the drummers, drum techs, like we call that the Byron. even Good Riddance at times when we're writing, like Chuck will be like, "Hey, dude, do a Byron right there." Yeah, okay. Phil will tell it like all the time. And we tell it to Byron too, and he knows exactly what Phil. It's like, yeah, dude, that's the Byron.
That's great.
Epic.
That's funny that you mentioned that's kind of an in joke, because I mean, I've definitely heard Sandin do it before.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to the catalog, the body of work. Obviously, you joined Good Riddance as, I believe, the second drummer for Modern Rebellion album. Did you play prior to that in other bands?
Yeah, real small bands. My very first real band, we actually just did a record last year or 2 years ago now, I guess. An old hardcore band called Downcast.
Okay.
You find them on iTunes. I'm on clearly the most recent record, but I was about 17 when I got in that band. I'd been playing drums for a year and a half, maybe. It's
wow.
Terrible.
Yeah. Terrible.
And I go back and listen to that first record, and I'm like, holy crap, this drummer, Chris, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
The record is maybe 1991, and ironically, I went back and listened, I'm like, dude, that's totally what I would have played if I was presented with these songs now.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, okay, now I kind of see where some of my own influence comes from. So I was in them, and I was supposed to go to University of Laverne with a full cross-country scholarship or go to Europe at Downcast.
Yeah.
That was a tough choice. But we ended up breaking up in Europe. That was in 92. And then just put together little bands in Santa Barbara, because all I wanted to do was figure out a way to get back on tour. I was barely 21 when I kind of auditioned / joined Good Riddance. I was in a new wave / kind of ska band in Santa Barbara called Sparker.
Uh-huh.
And we were this weird, a phenomenon in this town. Within 6 months, we were pulling 300-400 kids to our shows.
Wow.
Dude, what? We played one of the high school proms.
Really?
We were that popular that we got asked to play one of the high school proms. Because 150 kids from that high school all came to our shows, and they actually got us to play.
That's funny. My band played my own, 8th grade graduation, because all of us would just throw our own little shows, and so we wound up playing that. But I can't say that I played someone else's graduation.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. And then, ironically, that band was a major influence, and one of the major influences that started the Mad Caddies.
Oh, really?
3 of the original members were in the audience at this festival we played in Santa Barbara, and the crowd just went crazy. We literally got shut down after 15 minutes. We were a new wave band. We weren't even a punk band or anything.
Yeah.
And Carter, Chuck, and maybe either Keith or Sasha, they were all in the crowd, and they were like, we got to do a band like that.
That's
we
great.
Got to do a band like that. And they're all still buzzed. They told me that. I was like, no way, really? But ironically, because of Santa Barbara, I became good friends with Lagwagon in early 90s.
Yeah.
Maybe right when Trash came out.
Okay.
And Derek, the drummer, seriously became my best friend. And literally every day for probably about 2 years, unless he was on tour or I got lucky and happened to be, we would hang out every single day.
Wow.
Skateboard, come to my house, we would just play drums for 2-3 hours.
Rad.
I had 4 bands in town. Didn't matter. Just got to play 6-7 days a week. It was me and Derek. And Derek was really, a good friend of ours in town who actually kind of was a mentor / drum mentor for both Derek and I, a good friend of ours named Jonathan Gorman. Derek really, Bomber from RKL showed him, and then Derek showed me. And Derek was like, all right, dude, once I found out about Good Riddance, and it was because Sparker was opening for Lagwagon, AFI, and Good Riddance in Sacramento, Joey Cape goes, "Hey, dude, Good Riddance needs a drummer." And I was like, ripping. They were touring all summer. Chuck and I had kind of known each other a little bit back in high school at the time. When I found that out, Derek was like, "All right, here we go, dude. There's basically 3 punk beats."
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right." He goes, "Punk rock polka, doop-a, 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 doop-a."
Yeah, the Bill Stevenson, as I call it.
Yeah, and he goes, then there's the banana, doota, la doota, la doota, banana, 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 banana. And I'm like,
I've never
that's fucking
heard a name for that. That's great.
That's super funny. Then the next one, he was like, which later has been coined, butt fuck, titty fuck. Butt fuck, titty fuck, butt fuck, titty fuck, butt fuck, titty fuck, butt fuck, titty fuck. And I'm like, he was like, that's it. And he was like, now we just play with them.
Yeah.
And you could put them anywhere. And every single day I was like, oh, dude, that's super messed up. And Derek was a massive Neil Peart fan. Like Rifle, the Lagwagon song.
Yeah.
So Derek wrote that. It's actually a Rush song.
Oh, really?
That drum beat, I want to say it's either on Hemispheres or 2112, but it's a drum line from Neil Peart, but he does it on the hi-hat.
That's great.
And when Derek showed me that, I was like, dude, that is so sick. And then he was like, hey, check this out. And then he put Rush on. He was like, it's just that. And I'm like, it's just that, but like way cooler.
I love that stuff, though, bringing little elements of your other influences and using them in different ways, you know, like,
yeah.
Especially the longer you do this and the more records you've made, it becomes fun to sneak little things like that in there. I mean, I'm the guitar player, but I'll do little stuff like that. Like, these are the chords from Creeping Death, but it sounds nothing like that at all. It's, completely different rearrangement, tempo, everything else. But it's just also a little wink for your own amusement, you know.
Dude, I have snuck in more Good Riddance songs.
Yeah.
In other bands and on other bands' records. There's, for sure, in Visto Blanco, there's a song that both the bridge and most of the verse is just a Good Riddance song.
They're probably going like, wow, we got signature Sean today. This is great.
Yeah, they have no idea. But then the other bands don't either. Like, where, you know, maybe the fill might change. Like, I might be able to change a fill, but I'm like, there's a Mackenzie song, White Knuckle Ride. And I believe that song I tracked by myself.
Yeah.
I just put the click on and I already knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I literally we had just finished maybe recording My Republic. And I'd say there's a decent amount of that song that's Darkest Days.
Really?
Yeah, that I was like, oh shit, this totally works. And I'm like, rad. Like, nobody's going to know because it's just a beat.
Yeah.
But like, there's like little things that I had learned from Bill, like tracking that song, that I'm like, I can totally just literally almost play this entire song in this song.
That's great.
Like, killer. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I love that little shit, man.
Yeah.
So when you did that first record with Good Riddance and Ryan and everything, I mean, what was your experience at that time? Sounds like you hung out with the Lagwagon guys, you knew people, but before that you kind of had limited experience on the road or smaller bands, and then you guys are kind of really, really doing it, you know, cranking out records, hitting the road.
Yeah. I had recorded a bunch before, but I'd never recorded with like a real producer.
Yeah.
And it's something that I still kind of explain to people now, or people that I play with, where I'm like, you ever work with like a real producer? And they're like, well, yeah, I work with this guy. And I was like, yeah, okay. Did he like rewrite your parts and literally look at you in the face and go, wow, that was the worst thing I've ever heard. Don't ever do that again. And we're going to go ahead and rewrite that. And they were like, no. And I'm like, okay, so then that's a no. And neither had I. And you'd be surprised, even with Downcast, when we had gotten together again, 25 years later, like, hey, we want to do another record. And I'm like, cool. I don't want to go to a knob turner, and that's what I call it.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a dude that turns knobs, and then there's a guy that's going to go, dude, what are you doing? And you're also not in tune.
There's
you're
an
playing
engineer
in the wrong key.
And a producer, for sure.
Do you not hear that? So I actually got them to go to Ryan Green with me, and they were like, oh, gosh. I'm like, yeah, it's gnarly. It's super gnarly when your producer goes, hey, can you tighten the lug closest to your left leg? It totally is out of whack and out of tune. And also, can you tune your rack tom? And I can show you the exact moment where they both went out of tune and where that lug fell out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh? Really, dude?
Like, oh, shit, you're right.
Okay. That immediately changes you. So
just a new level of awareness. And like you were saying about playing with the in-ears onto the click, you become more aware of what you're doing wrong. I mean, what you're doing right as well, but also those little things that you can do to tighten it up.
And especially like, okay, so for Chuck on Comprehensive, like, he got beaten up a little bit by Ryan.
Really?
And Chuck was like, well, that's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
So going into ballads, as we were writing, I've gotten I've written out a lot of my stuff, and he was like, okay, what are you doing? How are you picking that? Like, now all of a sudden, because I don't ever want to get beat up like that again. So solve that problem right now.
There's something that bands in a room literally can't hear. The bass player might sound great next to the guitar player, but if you can't hear the kick pattern and you don't know you're out of sync, then you're not going to know that until you're actually recording the song. And that's why I love pre-production, honestly. I think every record needs to get demos so you can listen to it and go, oh, that's a bad idea.
Yeah. I love playing with Chuck because he always, and he's well aware of like, okay, Sean moves around a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you doing back there? What's your kick pattern for the verse? And I'm like, which one?
Yeah.
Because it kind of changes. Crap. Okay, let's do this. And we'll work through it together. He's like, ripping.
Awesome.
Okay. Exactly like you said. Yeah, you're going, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait. This isn't working. We didn't know. You can't hear the kick.
Yeah, it's almost imperceptible in the room.
Yeah. And a lot of times, too, you're so focused either on yourself or just, like, the feeling.
Yeah.
It zips by. So, yeah, I love pre-production. But also, like, not being afraid to sit down with each other and work through each. Like, hey, we're going in, Bill Stevenson, Cameron Webb, Ryan Green. Like, do you want to be bummed when you get in there? And they're just like, fucking, you guys suck. Like, really? It's like, that's no fun.
Especially when you've rehearsed the shit wrong a million times now, and you have to change it and unlearn all that muscle memory,
Mm-hmm.
And I had Ryan as a guest on the show a couple years back, and he talked about those early records particularly being really low budget and just burning through as many songs as possible, mixing them in a day or two.
We had more time with Comprehensive because Forgotten Country sold so well.
Oh, good.
So always the first record with the band, Mike was like, we're going to bang this out. It's a punk band.
Yeah.
Bang it out. Make it sound good. Now let's see what happens. Did you guys work? Did you guys get bigger? Did you sell a bunch of records?
Yeah.
Holy shit. You sold a bunch of records. Let's take more time on this next record. So, like, from Comprehensive on, our record started taking between 3 and 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just ours. I mean, it was everybody. Propaganda, everybody on their first record with Fat at that time, because they were still young too, so they didn't have the budget. So it's like, dude, we got to get this out.
Yeah.
But like I said, once sold 80,000, 100,000 records, and you're a punk band, like, yeah, let's take a little bit more time. Because that happened, which was insane. It's totally insane.
That's nuts.
None of us were on the radio. None of us we were just touring.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Especially not something that happens much anymore with new bands.
No. So hard.
I want to get to Operation Phoenix. That was a big record for me. I had just been playing in my first band a little bit when I got to see my first live punk show was Less Than Jake, Good Riddance, All, and Limp here at the Wow Hall in Eugene. And that was just such an amazing show between you guys and the first Rise Against and Ensign and maybe a little like Shut Your Mouth from AFI. I was just kind of being exposed to hardcore, melodic hardcore. Man, that record had such a unique sound. I had never heard a Blasting Room record before either. And it just so many ways became a real formative time for me. Now, Russ had mentioned that it was you who recommended Bill as the producer because you followed Jason's band, Wretch Like Me. Is that your recollection of that?
That is almost completely correct. Yes, it was me that did the major push for Bill and Stefan.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because of Wretch Like Me. I did totally like that band, but it was just more about Bill and Stefan, and I knew what our band needed and wanted.
Yeah.
Based on like band discussions. At the time, Russ was like, obviously was way into hardcore. And, you know, we sat in my house in Santa Cruz and everybody brought in records from producers that they liked. We're like, okay, we're going to move away from Ryan. We need this. We keep doing records that don't sound like our band.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then, hello, fucking Black Flag and Descendants are like 90% of the influences of this fucking band, dude. Why don't we just go to the source?
Yeah.
Which, ironically, if you listen to Comprehensive and Ballads, they're drum heavy. I mean, it's all about me, honestly. Like, it's me and Russ, and then the guitars are definitely behind that.
Yeah.
So, as a drummer, I'm like, woo, drum records, oh yeah. But I knew that's not what the band needs. Like, we want to sound like Good Riddance.
Yeah.
Well, let's go, dude. So we sat in my room and I really pushed it. We put all these records on. But every time anybody had a record, I went, okay, cool. Now put ballads on.
Yeah.
And then we'd put ballads on and everybody'd go,
no.
And I'm like, so you want to go backwards? And everyone's like, yeah, no. And then I put Mass Nerder was the last thing that they had done.
Oh,
I
man.
put Mass Nerder on, and I'm like...
I love that record.
Or...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, how much, again, do we rip off Black Flag and the Descendants in our songs?
Yeah.
So let's just go to the source. It really was, like, we sat there and, dude, maybe, like, 15 different albums of different bands that we all liked. Because we had the option. We can go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, you want to go to Don Fury? Like, Don Fury had come up. Like, a lot of East Coast producers had come up.
Yeah.
And I just kept going, all right, cool. Well, here's ballads.
That's great, though. I mean, it's one thing to bring in, like, okay, you're going to work with this dude. You come to the studio and you're like, hey, here's a couple records we've been listening to that are big influences. You know, give them an idea of where you're at. But to sit there as a band and be like, I don't know, guys, what about this? And you're like, well, this is our last record, so we need to make a big change, you know?
Yeah. Because even Bill had called me after we were like, hey, we want you guys to do our record.
Yeah.
And they didn't know who we were. So they got the last two records. They got Comprehensive and Ballads. Bill literally called me up and he was like, all right, dude, what do you want from us? And I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, sonically speaking, these are two of the literally best sounding records Stefan and I have ever heard.
Yeah.
To date, right now, sonically, there's no way we can make your record sound that good.
Yeah.
Like, we're just being honest with you.
Because they were still in the early years.
Like, it's not what we were looking for. I'm like, that's actually part of the problem. We need it to sound really good, but we need it to sound like our band, which is a punk band.
Yeah.
Phil was like, well, we can do that.
Like, oh, you want to make a hardcore record? I get it. That record was just obviously a magic pairing. I mean, you've been working with them ever since. You know, I've had both Bill and Jason on the show before, and I wonder what that was like, too. I've heard Jason say some bands come in and they're like, wait, why do you keep stopping the tape? You know, you're recording me like 10 seconds at a time, you know, also being very, very anal about the performances. Once you got there, how different did that feel?
Wow. My time with them now is so different from ballads. So we were the first Fat band they had ever recorded.
Really?
They'd mixed Let's Talk About Feelings.
Uh-huh.
That's it. They'd never recorded anyone in our little world. So a couple things. I mean, like, I was hoping to go in and blow Bill away. And upon that session, I didn't necessarily.
Yeah.
They were super blown away with Luke. But Bill and Stephen were tag team. I was literally like tracking 14 hours a day.
Man.
Nonstop. And they were beating the crap out of me. Like, I'm working on a song for an hour while they built the click and we worked on all my drum parts. And then I started tracking it.
And at that level of energy and speed, like we were talking about before, like, that's a long day.
I mean, they're workhorses, A.
Yeah.
And it's just how they are. But they also, again, hadn't recorded anybody else in the Fat world or in the Epitaph world like that.
Yeah.
So they just kind of assumed that, like, 'cause I was younger, you know, I'm like 23, 24 at the time, something like that, 24, maybe, I don't know. And they just assumed I was average and everybody was like me.
So you guys are the first impression.
Yeah, and they just sort of wrote it off. They were like, okay, ripping. Everybody's stoked. Then they start recording all these other bands. And then you fast forward to, like, My Republic. Bill was calling me for, like, almost a month prior, just freaking out, so excited. And I'm like, wait, did I miss something? And it went from, whatever, to, he's one of our, like...
You're my favorite.
one of our favorites, actually. And I was like, whoa, ripping, this is super rad. So My Republic, Bill and I went a little crazy.
I mean, that's a fantastic sounding album. I mean, that's one of their best. For a studio that puts out a lot and a lot of very high quality, I mean, that is a great sounding record.
Yeah, we had so much fun. It was a constant back and forth.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait, I got an idea. And they'll do this. Oh, talk, okay. And bang this out. I'm like, oh, what about? And then, like, an hour later, him going, we should probably pick one.
Yeah, let's do a take.
We just wasted like an hour. Okay. What was the first one?
Yeah.
And then the last two records, it was more of him just letting me go.
I mean, that's great. When I had him on and I brought up Good Riddance, he was like, oh, my God, those guys are my family. Like, I love those guys so much. I've always just been a huge fan, again, both of your guys' style and, you know, the energy there and Chuck's gnarly distorted bass, you know, and just those hard-hitting drums, and as well as the Blasting Room just simultaneously being a huge influence in the sound that I go after as a producer, you know, and when you guys tag team every time, it's just, it's a magic chemistry, man. They do great work across the board, but there's always something special when you guys get down together.
Yeah, we became family real fast. And then obviously, you know, Bill got arrested to do Only Crime, and it's total family. I love those dudes.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit and shift gears. So you left for a little while right around the Phenomenon of Craving EP, kind of before Symptoms. You mentioned Kidney Thieves. Did you leave just to work on other projects at that time?
Yeah, I was trying to really kind of move up. I wanted to be a better drummer, not just a punk drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, I still do. I wanted to be more like radio rock, bigger. I want to go big.
Yeah.
You know? And why wouldn't I? I play drums for a living. Like, what idiot decides to do that? So if you're going to choose the world's like most difficult career to have, you might as well try to go big. So I moved down to LA and started auditioning for bands.
Yeah.
I felt like I was the runner-up, which I was. I was like the almost guy for Puddle of Mud, Seether, Bad Religion.
Oh, like when Brooks joined and Bobby left, you were in the running for that?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was totally me.
Oh, man.
But not when you're going against Brooks. So all of a sudden, it's not you anymore. I was in the car with Greg and Brett. Just came out to lunch, confidence raging.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, Brett, I'd been up to Brett's house. He gave me all the CD. We talked. He was like, everybody knows you're going to be our drummer.
Yeah.
And I'm like freaking out, like, no way. In my mind, I'm like, the only way I lose this gig is Josh or Brooks.
Yeah.
I'm not losing it to Josh. There's no way. And I heard Brooks doesn't want this gig. Thank God, because he could be with anybody.
Yeah.
But if this guy goes, I'm out. Like, that sucks. Because
Man.
my best day isn't even as good as Brooks' worst day. That dude is so gnarly. And I'm in the car, just like drums are set up. Dude, I'm going to be in Bad Religion at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Epitaph calls. Shit's on speakerphone. Hey, Brett. So Brooks just called, and he's decided he does want to audition. And I'm like,
oh, fuck.
And there goes my gig.
Man.
I literally, like, watched my gig float out the window and float down to wherever Brooks lives. And I'm like, fuck. Really? They hang up, and I just went, wasn't Brooks Wackerman, was it? Brett's like, yeah, do you know who he is? And I'm like, unfortunately, I do. He's your new drummer.
Oh, fuck, man.
And they were like, what do you mean? I go, well, let me ask you this. If Josh Free said he wanted to be your drummer right now, would you take him? And they were like, well, duh. And I'm like, okay, well, there you go.
Yeah. Well, and Brooks had just done, I think, that one Vandals record in place of Josh Freeze.
Yeah.
I remember listening to it going like, man, he stepped up his game on this one, and then look at the credits, I'm like, oh, wait, who is this Brooks guy? I guess he played on this one.
I've been watching Brooks play with the Vandals. I've only seen Josh in the Vandals a couple times. I've seen Brooks in the Vandals tons of times, right? I used to film Brooks. He was like 16, 17. I used to it was like watching a skateboard video, and I'm slow-mowing, like trying to figure out like what this cool-ass shit that he's firing away, and I'm like,
yeah,
rewind frame by frame. Like, okay, dude, come on, man.
So
He's so good.
I mean, years later, when Brooks moved on, did you have that in the back of your mind? Like, I mean, I could do it now.
I talked to them. I was supposed to get a call, but I don't know why I didn't. I mean, they had auditioned Jamie, and I think they're just stoked, and that guy is totally phenomenal anyways.
Yeah.
I also was doing Good Riddance again, so maybe that had something to do with it. Like,
conflict.
We don't want to cherry pick some dude from another band, but
yeah.
At the same time, Jamie could have already auditioned, and they were like, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Just, that dude's really good. It's like really good.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a shock to the system after seeing him with Brooks so many times with two new members at that point. But when they dropped that next record, it was really good.
Yeah. He's such a great drummer. Tons of energy. Can't go wrong.
So when LA, I guess, doesn't work out, what leads you back from iRepublic? I mean, were you aware of like Symptoms and Blood and Affection when those records are coming out? Like,
of course. Luke and I are still friends. Luke and I were doing another band.
Okay.
I ended up getting in Kidney Thieves, touring with them, and then maybe it was like 2004, Bound by Ties just came out.
Yeah.
And Dave Wagon Shoots didn't really tour anymore. And Luke asked me if I wanted to go to Australia. I was like, well, yeah. Of course. And then they asked me if I wanted to rejoin was like, yeah, for sure. And then I want to say, okay, so I rejoined, and then like a year later, Ryan Green called me to do the Mackenzie's record. And I ended up joining the Mackenzies. So there was a brief moment where I was doing both, which was super convenient.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, Russ mentioned that they did their most touring ever after Symptoms, and then the least after Bound by Ties.
Yeah, well, I would say we did the most touring we ever did, really, was from Forgotten Country on. I mean, we were 8 months a year.
Damn.
It didn't slow down until after Symptoms.
So then, of course, you guys go on, I call it hiatus now in retrospect, but at the time you guys split after My Republic. When you guys came back, I think, just as a fan, that Peace in Our Time is top 3, if not best thing you guys ever did. I mean,
thank you.
Everyone sounded so energized, and yeah, I guess that's the best word. It just had so much fucking energy. Yeah. You know, the production especially sounded really elevated. It was a very drum-heavy record, but it just sounds fucking huge. I mean, everything about it, like the first single coming out, just like the real aggressive guitars, still catchy. Every song is fast, you know, till the very end anyway. But I mean, how good did it feel to get everyone, you know, back at it after so many years?
It was awesome. I had been touring a lot with Authority Zero.
Really?
So I quit Mackenzie's in 2012 and then joined Authority Zero.
Yeah.
And then we got an offer to play Grows Rock.
Yeah.
That was like, well, okay. Because it was really funny. Like, I had been in touch with Luke and Chuck, and we had been talking about the three of us starting something new.
Yeah, it sounded like Russ took some convincing to do that.
He did it first, but then quickly, like, once we started, I mean, when we do our group messages, he almost responds yes faster than me.
Really?
So that's super awesome. It's funny because I didn't stop. And our booking agent in Spain, he had been hounding me for years. And in the Mackenzies, at one point, I had Carl from Descendants on bass. And
oh, wow.
Carl and I would laugh because we're like, you and I'd be doing so much better if our old bands would just play again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I know, right? We're like, what the hell? Because Descendants weren't playing.
Yeah.
Good Riddance isn't playing. And then our agent in Spain and promoter in Spain, who's, he does all of us, he's hounding me and kept telling me, like, what if I offered the band this much money? And I was like, keep going. I'm like, that's great for me. I'm like, but there's no way, dude.
Yeah.
And Carl, same deal, just like, and we're both shaking our heads going, dude, this sucks. But if every time I see you, you manage to up this number, and eventually you're going to up it to a number where I'm going to have to call these dudes and be like, are you guys serious?
Yeah.
And that kind of happened. But it was ironically right at a time when, like I said, me, Luke, and Chuck had been talking about starting something. And I think Russ was definitely getting to a place too where he was ready to, like, I kind of miss touring with my buds.
Yeah. I mean, the hunger is so apparent on that album.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to go away, gain a little perspective.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's the best thing that my band ever did was break up, because we came back, I think 4 years later, and kind of like, listening with the in-ears. It's like, wow, when you listen to our old shit, why were we doing some of these things? Let's do it. Let's do it right this time, And having kind of the benefit of those years of perspective to look back and be like, we could do this a lot better now.
Yeah.
And then, of course, following it with the brilliantly titled Thoughts and Prayers record. That tour was one of the last shows that I saw before lockdown, actually, when you guys played up in Portland. And it kind of cemented the return. Like, okay, we didn't just do a reunion album. Like, no, we're doing this again.
Yeah. I really like that record. There's a lot on it that I'm super, super stoked on. A couple of the songs I loved to pieces. And we put that together pretty fast, actually.
Really?
And especially when I know I'm going in, like even in May, I did 2 different records with Cameron Webb. One of them is with Versus the World, which is Santa Barbara band. Big Chris from Lagwagon's in that band.
I'd really like to hear your drums with his mixing style. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, it's coming out really good, but I have a lot of pressure on myself, and I'm like, I have to be super on point when I'm going in. Especially with any producer. I've worked with those 3 a bunch, but it's like Bill or Ryan Green, who are drummers.
Yeah. Can't fool them.
Yeah, so I finished a full day early for Thoughts and Prayers.
Really?
Yeah, a full day early. Because I was super prepared. Russ, when he sends out his demos, structurally and vocally, they're good.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is easy. Now I'm just writing.
Yeah.
Like, to a pre-made structure and melody. It's easy. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's super helpful. But Chuck always keeps us on point with making sure it's got the fire.
Yeah, I mean,
always.
You two really bring the energy even in the most melodic songs, and I wonder, because like the past year on and off, I've been writing, the 6th record for my band. You find yourself falling into, oh, well, yeah, this should go there. Let's not do that, though. Like, how do you keep it from repeating yourself after this many years and this many records?
Well, playing other music and styles of music helps.
Yeah.
In a big way. So I played drums at a dueling piano bar.
Oh, really?
Everything from hip-hop to country to Britney Spears to, 70s, 80s, current music.
Yeah.
And it's great. And you start learning, and then playing in rock bands, and I'm playing all these other things. And so that is a big influence. And plus, I don't listen to punk music anymore.
Really?
I'm not even kidding you. Like, if you sit in my car and I have Sirius,
yeah,
most likely yacht rock radio will be on. And if it's not yacht rock, then it would be like First Wave, classic vinyl, the Bob Marley station, or the jazz station, or the soul station.
Is it sort of like you don't want to be sounding like other people, or you're just like, I've done this my whole life, I'm over it, or what? I mean, you're still doing it with such heart.
For sure. It's not that I don't love it, but it's like, I don't know, it takes a lot to kind of stoke me out when I hear that. Don't get me wrong, like, I'll put Municipal Waste on any day of the week.
Yeah.
I love Municipal Waste. That excites me.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear shit that excites me, and dude, I get more excited over listening to Steely Dan and just epic playing, and I'm like, yeah, wait, what happened there? Whoa. Because I want to be Josh Freese.
Yeah.
I want to be good enough to play in Sting. Well, I got to listen to more than punk rock.
Yeah.
I need to be able to play some Toto. And
that I love, because in our years where the band was broken up, I would assemble one at a time bands. Like, hey, you want to work on a Nirvana cover record? Sure. And we'll do a whole set of that. Like, all right, cool. Hey, you guys, let's do a Foo Fighters one. All right, cool, And each time I'd do that, I'd find myself picking up the guitar, and I got to do a different chord formation, or I got to do a different progression that I wouldn't have thought of before. And so that really did inform when I would write records afterward, would be like, oh, I'm not just necessarily going to the go-to lick necessarily on my instrument. So you're right. That is a very good way to keep it fresh, is to just kind of diversify what you're practicing to,
Yeah. Other people do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I Want You Back, Jackson 5. Like, it's a song that I play at the piano bar all the time. And
yeah.
You kind of think you know it until you try to play it, like, especially on drums, and you're like, I don't actually know how to play this song. Like, holy shit. That rhythm section was so rad, and da-na-na-na. Like, you don't hit that on the drums.
Yeah.
He does a da-na-na-na.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so ripping. Like, my brain wants to hit that ba-da-da-da, and because that's what we always would do.
That's the rock version, but yeah, the funk version has so much more space. You know, when you're grooving like that, there's so much more. Because I also have a extensive hip hop background, and yeah, it's a totally different way of looking at composition.
Yeah, so taking those things and like finding places for them in punk and in rock.
Yeah,
that keeps it fresh. And no matter who decides to do something like that, whether it's a guitar player, bass player, even a singer singing more of a soul melody, so like Chad Price, he comes in. He's one of my favorite singers of all time.
Yeah.
It is so lame when I play with him because I can't have him in my monitor, because if I do, I totally fuck up.
You're just listening to him distracted?
Because I listen to him and he comes in late. I'm already on the 1 and he's coming in on like 2.5, and I'm like, but catching up and doing these things, and I'm like, oh, damn it, I can't listen to you.
Yeah.
I want to listen to you, but I can't listen to you. Because if I listen to you, we're definitely train wrecking.
Yeah.
Like, this is bad news. But it's really cool. And then when you listen back, you're like, okay, I can change some of my patterns now.
Well, I like that too, because you do it without reinventing the band. You guys didn't do your like Blink-182 self-titled record where everything's experimental now. It's like, yeah, it's still a Good Riddance record, but it does still feel new and original,
Yeah. Progressing as a player has a lot to do with it. Chuck is playing better than ever.
Yeah.
Honestly, like his other band, Seized Up, Andy from the Distillers plays drums for them.
Oh, nice.
And he's got Distiller shows. Seized Up is playing punk rock bowling, so I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll do it.
Nice.
But there's like wacky stops, and it's kind of like old school, like Rollins-y Black Flag type of stuff. It's just like, oh my Lord. But it's so good. And I totally realized, wow, I can see how much this has helped Chuck as a bass player when he comes back to like Good Riddance. It's just like, wow, dude, you're a totally different bass player these days. Like, and in such a great way.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's playing better than ever. I love playing with Chucky.
I forgot how funny that dude was until the last time I saw you guys, when he's just fucking with the audience the whole time. Like, I always remember them, the three of them just being right up front in the crowd the whole time, rocking out. But like, he'd be doing shit like, if a dude was watching Russ, he would reach down and tap a dude on his shoulder and then keep playing and watch the guy turn around and look at who it was. And he did it like 6 times in one song. But yeah, I just got a kick out of watching him again.
I love Chucky.
So I guess last thing I'm aware of that you dropped was with Ryan again, the 10-foot pole record. I guess it sounds like, I thought that was going to be kind of a reunion of sorts, but it sounds like you've been working with Ryan on and off this whole time.
Yeah. So that year I did the Bisto Blanco record with Ryan, which is how I got in that band. And then right after that, I did the 10-foot pole record with Ryan. And then right after that, I did a Downcast record with Ryan. And then later that year, I flew up to Canada and did the last Real Mackenzie's record.
Wow. Busy man. What else you got on the horizon here? Anything that you can talk about? Yeah,
I did. In May, I did drums for a Canadian band called 22.
Mm-hmm.
I tracked their record, and then the next week I tracked the Versus the World record. That was in May, and then I've taken like too many weeks off, like 5 or 6. I went and rehearsed today, and I'm like, oh, dude, it's painful. I've been playing with Pulley, so I've got some shows with Pulley coming up, and we are working on a new record also, I believe.
Nice. That's great, man. I really didn't recognize from the outside that you are kind of just the jack of all trades down there. You're playing with everybody who needs it. That's a pretty great way to make a living,
Yeah, have to. My kid is now almost 19, so...
If it's okay to ask, how's he doing? I know last year you had posted he had some health problems.
Yeah. No, he's all good, cancer-free for over a year.
That's amazing.
You got to stay on point. Every so often, a little scare can freak you out. You know, it might not even be a scare, but it's like we're pretty hyper conscious about everything. But now, kid works like 6 days a week. He's a busser at a steakhouse, and he works at the pet store. He's got a small salt tank going, 2 big old fish tanks. He's killing it. He starts college in the fall. So
fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show and kicking off our new season.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, that is our show. Huge thank you to Sean for coming on. That was a great talk. I really appreciate everybody tuning in for the new season. If you've got suggestions, people you want to hear, hit me up on social media at Sammy Warm Hands. And if I'm a fan, I will try to reach out to them. If you like the show, please spread the word in your stories. Let people know that we are back in action. We've got plenty of content up the sleeve. I'm going to leave you with one of Sean's personal favorites from the recent album Thoughts and Prayers. This is Good Riddance. Wish you well.
Like a song